waste, but I don't want to get you too upset. But the main thing, stage 2, stage 1 I mentioned, yes on 6, we'll tell the politicians when we give you permission to raise your taxes. Stage 2, once this passes, this is even better. So much waste right now with the gas tax, with that $2.2 billion bus station, instead of fixing the roads, instead of providing more buses to the people, the next stage will be 100% of the gas tax will only go to roads. That's actually going to be the next citizens' drive, so think about that. First stage, with this yes on 6, we'll give you permission when to raise your taxes. The next stage will be, now we're going to tell you how to spend our money. Think about that. We're taking back California by doing that. This is only the beginning by doing that, and I think that's all.
Thank you. You're right on time.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Curtis. Okay.
I'll take it. Please ask a question, please.
Yes. So, questions. We can start here.
Okay. So the gas tax was only passed last year. Don't you think that's not really enough time to see what benefits we can get from the programs that are being funded by the gas tax?
Yes, but you have to bear in mind this gas tax that passed last year is only a little chunk of it. It's 12 cents more a gallon this year. Next year we don't stop, it'll be 20 cents a gallon. It's basically a small chunk of money.
But I'm asking, don't you think that not enough time has passed to see the benefits? I understand that.
Yes, I understand there are some benefits, but how much money has been wasted over the decades? How many roads that should have been fixed out of the decade? Let me lead up to it.
Yeah.
I'm leading into what you're saying. Yes, I agree we need money for roads, but we have the 4th highest in the nation before this gas tax was implemented. Now we're one of the highest in the nation. By doing the yes and 6 repealing, we're still the 4th highest in the nation. $2 gas in Texas, why not California? We can do it, and they have roads. In fact, Texas has double the amount of highways as California with less population and $2 gas, less population, less tax revenue, yet we have more population, more tax revenue, yet there's so much waste. There's so much waste.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Curtis.
you.
We just want to also just remind everyone that we have some heated topics. The people that are here, we invited both sides for every issue. The people that are here using their time. Let's just respect that. If you don't feel the question is answered, then you let that be a part of your decision making when you vote. Okay? Next question.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Just to be clear, did you say that if 6 remains, that it'll go from 12 cents to 20 cents next year because of 6 alone?
Now, bear in mind, yes on 6 is the repeal of SB 1.
Yeah, I thought you just said it's 12 this year and next year will be 20 cents
Yes,
per
right
gallon.
now, currently the gas tax is 12 cents more a gallon.
Right.
Sacramento Bee did a report on it, SB 1. You can look at the SB 1 ruling. SB 1 was actually what the politicians passed without our vote. They passed 12 cents more a gallon and the 175 restoration depending on your vehicle. If it's not stopped because of, you can Google it, California gas swap from 2010, because the writing in that California gas swap, it's not inflation, it's an automatic increase. So next year it'll be 20 cents a gallon. The following year it's going to be an automatic increase. We're not talking about inflation, we're talking about in the books that automatically raise the gas tax.
Okay. And what is the actual annual cost to each one of us currently?
Just real quick.
Yeah,
That's 2
it's a bunch
questions.
of numbers that BJ showed on the table, but basically about out of a $4 gas tax for comparison, you go back east, they're about $2.40, $2.20. So right there you do the math. Why is ours so much higher? There's definitely a lot of other tax besides just this little bit of 12 cents extra.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Curry. Question over here.
Hi.
Hi.
How many jobs in San Diego, construction jobs for these roads, would be lost if we were to repeal this funding?
That's a very good question. We do want everybody to have their jobs, but just to show you how much waste there is in these jobs, Caltrans, when you drive out, I don't know if anybody heard about it, they blocked the highway going out on third party, but they're still paying for by our gas taxes. They blocked the highway, campaigning and passing out no on 6. If they have enough time to block the road going to 78 Job Pine to do no on 6, why aren't they while they're on the clock fixing the roads? There's a lot of waste, a lot of abuse. Also, the supervisors got a 4.1 pay raise about 2 weeks before that guy they blocked that highway because of our gas tax. And you can look at how much they're making. They're making 5 times the private sector when it comes to pensions. And there's a lot of ways, that's where a lot of money is going to be going to pensions. Thank you.
Ms. Beard?
All right, so I've been seeing, mirroring on the first question, I've been seeing a whole lot of SB1 signs when I've been driving around, so that's money. I believe we'd lose about $1 billion, and why is it necessary for your next initiative to be something to limit what this money is spent on when just this spring in June we passed Prop 69, which limited SB1 to a lockbox for transportation funding?
Thank you. Yeah, basically what happened with that SB1, it has a double-edged sword on it. First, it did lock to transportation. Let's take that word transportation. What does it mean? Do we know it all goes to roads? Does it go to buses? Or does it go to the pension fund? It's very arbitrary. It's very open and word. And then here's the most horrible thing, in case a lot of people didn't notice. I voted no on 69. Not because it's going to affect this yes on 6, because it also exempts it from the GAN limit. What 69 did was exempt their maximum spending limit per year, so now they got extra money to spend because the voters were fooled by voting yes on 69.
Hello, Mr. Waxman.
Sorry.
Hello. Just a quick question for the crowd. How many people drove over a pothole today on the way here? Okay. So my understanding, the question for you, a couple things. My understanding, this is $5 billion in repairs for potholes. And another question I have, the big person behind this is Carl DeMaio, Donald Trump's #1 fan here in San Diego. He is best known for cutting the pensions of San Diego city workers, promising that he was saving us money, and now we're in this situation. A lawsuit was against this measure. Now it potentially is going to cost the city a lot of money. How do we know that this is another situation where Carl DeMaio is promising to save us money, but we're going to pay more tomorrow? And let me just say again, I just brought my car back from the repair. I paid $1,200. So that's already more than what you claim I'm going to save on gas. So how do you know you're not dangling the savings today and we're not going to pay more tomorrow? Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the question, as I mentioned earlier, is the waste. That money should have been used for potholes, like the $2.2 billion bus station. You know, Los Angeles, they're painting epoxy in the roads to reflect the heat. $40,000 a mile. Put epoxy paint down at $40,000 a mile to reflect the heat. Arizona University did a study. It does cool the road, but guess where that heat goes? Right onto the skyscrapers. Cook on the skyscrapers using more energy that way. At $40,000 a mile, they're also required to repaint the roads every 7 years. How many potholes did we not fix because of that? How many potholes and buses did we not put in service out of the $2.2 billion boondoggle in Bristol? There's a lot of ways, and yes, I agree with you. We need to fix the roads. Well, let's spend the money wisely. Instead of buying a $1.6 million bus in LA, converting everything to electric bus, I want to fix better climate, but not at $1.6 million a bus.
So this is going to be the last question for this.
Nobody likes taxes. I don't like taxes either. But taxes are the price that we pay for living in a civilized society. Right now, when this tax was passed, cars got like 23, 21 miles a gallon. Everybody's car gets 40-some miles a gallon now, and they're still chewing up the roads. The other thing is I have an electric car. I don't pay anything for tax, but I ride up and down the road chewing up the road, and every time you see a Tesla or a Prius or one of these cars, they're chewing up the roads without anything, without paying any tax at all. The other thing is that when you say you're going to put money directly into only for cars, what you're doing is you're cutting away, like rather than a whole transportation budget, you're putting away money for keeping people from putting money in buses and public transit that would keep number of cars on the road so the roads just jam up again. And the other thing is that,
Finish your thoughts, sir.
I just one more thing. Like, you act like pollution is not a problem. Like, and when we see the storms and the global warming, we have to do something to reduce that. And I don't see, it's like head in the sand.
Sir, is there a question?
I mean, don't you think some adjustment should be made to the fact that the vehicles get much, much higher mileage now, and some people are not paying anything? That was in that bill that they passed.
Yes, I hear what you're saying about converting electric vehicles, but bear in mind the electric vehicle owners also pay more on the car registration. In addition, starting in 2020, if you buy an electric vehicle, there's a $100 surcharge. There's time and time again, they will sneak another fine, another fee, another tax. By voting yes on 6, this is the mark when we say we had enough, because it puts them on notice, because think about it. We'll give them permission when to raise a tax ever again on gas and car registration. That is so huge. I just say we control it, not the politicians.
If this proposition passes, is the money going to a general fund, or is it exclusively set aside for what it's meant to? And that is for repairs, for transportation. Where is the money going to go? Because we did this before and it went to a general fund. So they would pickpocket from that money to do other things.
Okay, let me just say that I get it, but when we say last question, it's because we have 8 more things to go through with an hour left. Okay, so if you could give 30 seconds to that, and please honor the timing that we're on. Okay.
The money has been going to general fund for the past 20, 30 years out of our gas tax. When we're done here, please come back. This is wide open for anybody to see. My notes is for the people to see. So please come back, and I'd love to Q&A. Please. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Everyone give a hand to Mr. Alex Curry. When we say hot button issues, he was in the hot seat, and let me tell you, he withstood the heat, okay? And he is still willing to share his binder with you all and spend some more time. And I say, take him up on it. If you believed before that you were a no on 6, have a conversation with him. Have the conversation, and he's welcoming the conversation, and that is what this is all about. Facts and knowledge being presented to our community. Now let's go to a fun proposition. Let's shake it off. I think Proposition 7 is so exciting. And when I say that, I don't care how we go as Californians with Proposition 7. And there's not too many propositions where I actually have that opinion on. I'm either a yes or I'm a no. You won't know anything about where I stand on the propositions tonight. Maybe tomorrow on Facebook. But Proposition 7 actually gives us a chance to tell our state legislature that we want to eliminate daylight savings time change. Did you know that? Did you even know that was on your ballot?
Yeah, I knew that like 2 weeks ago. So I don't even know what position I'm supposed to be defending, but yeah, it is a proposition to change the way we do things now. How about that?
Well, listen, have you ever shown up to church because you didn't set your time back? You showed up at the wrong time, you either came an hour later, you came an hour early? Okay, we have the chance to say we don't want to change our time 2 times a year. So that's what Proposition 7 is all about. And I really don't have a dog in the fight because I trust you all, and whatever you all do, I'll be okay with. But I do want to talk to you about some of the cons about the proposition. Folks who are no on 7 say that our children are going to be going to school darker, at a darker time. So that is something that we have to think about. But if you're a yes on 7, then you are saying you want more daylight later in the day. Okay? So it's whatever your preference is. Now there's science and people have researched this and say that when we change the time twice a year, we throw off our sleep and we throw off our energy. And it has been proven that we have more heart attacks, more strokes, and even more traffic collisions when we have a time change. But the downside of not changing is that we're going to be, as a state, out of step with 47 other states. And think about it, Arizona, they did not adopt daylight savings change. And so when I travel to Arizona, I always think, oh, what month am I in? Are we in the same time zone? We're going to be doing that with 47 different states. And so Another argument from the opponents is that it's gonna drive up business costs because it's gonna take us out of sync. But again, I trust you all. Just vote whatever is best for your sleep. Was that not a fun proposition to talk about? Seriously, right? I'm so excited about this. I'm stoked about this. Stoked. But, I do want to say this. Even if we vote yes, it still has to be approved by 2/3 of our state legislature. But we have seen that our state legislators really do want to eliminate daylight savings time change. So it is a pretty good probability that if we voted yes, Sacramento will vote yes, but then it has to go to the federal government because it is the federal government that actually sets time zones. So much fun! Okay, we're moving on to Prop 10.
Yes, this will be another good one. This is another good one. So, again, both sides of each issue that we talk about this evening have been invited. And so the chairman of the San Diego Tax Fighters sends his regrets. But we do have, in favor of Proposition 10, the executive director of ACE. ACE is the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. And we have Paola here. Please come out. There you go. Thank you so much for being with us. And so we will give you
4 minutes for your position.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Paula Martinez Montes, and I'm the director at ACE San Diego. And I'll tell you a little bit about what ACE is because it's important in terms of of our proposition. So ACE is a statewide community organization. We've been fighting for social, economic, and racial justice. And a lot of our members, a lot of the work that we've done have been related to housing. And we're part of a statewide coalition that's Housing Now. And lots of our members were hit hard, like many of, like this community especially, by the foreclosure crisis. So lots of people lost their homes. Anybody know someone that lost their homes in 2008, 2009? Yeah, so now lots of our members are renters. And so one of the biggest issues, we organize by door knocking every single day, and the biggest issue that's been brought to us is the fact that the rents are way too high. And so every year, we organize all over the state. Every year we went to Sacramento and we fought with our legislature, and we asked them to repeal a state law that's called Costa-Hawkins. And what this law does is essentially makes rent control illegal in the entire state. And in places that passed rent control in the 1970s, it excludes things like single-family homes, condos, and new construction. So it really limits it to only apartment complexes. So anybody rents a single-family home? Yeah, so you would not be covered under rent control if rent control were enacted in San Diego, and that's what's been happening in places like San Francisco and Los Angeles and Oakland, lots of places that have rent control. But because there's so many exclusions and we're so limited with what we can cover, it hasn't worked as much as we would like. We strongly believe that Prop 10 is there to protect renters. And what it does, by voting yes on this, what you would do is repeal the state law that doesn't allow for us to pass new rent control policies and expand rent control policies where we already have them. And it would bring back power to local communities like San Diego to explore, right, rent control as an option for us. When, earlier when Steve Russell was talking about 1 and 2, we're talking about creating new housing for our most vulnerable population, and we need that, right? We need to build more housing, but most importantly, we need to preserve the housing stock that we have now. We need to keep people in their homes. Every time that there's a rent increase in the city of LA, that means that anytime that there's a 5% increase on the rent, there's 2,000 people on the street. So the fact that the rent is going up means that there's more homeless on our street. So there's a direct correlation between the two things. Again, repealing Costa-Hawkins by voting yes on 10 would not mean that we all of a sudden have rent control. It just gives us the option to explore that. Lots of our elected officials are very scared of even exploring rent control because they think it's illegal. We can pass rent stabilization policies that can, begin to get at some of the issues that we're facing. Really, the rent gouging, right? There's rent increases every single day. There's rent increases between $200, $50. We've seen rent increases in San Diego and National City, which is supposed to be a low-income neighborhood, of $900. And so that is what we're trying to stop. We won't stop that with repealing Costa-Hawkins, but we do need to explore rent control as an option to preserve people in their homes and give us more time to build more housing.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martinez. Do we have any questions about Proposition 10? Whoever gets to the mic first. All right.
Hi, so we may or may not know, but over 70% of San Diegans or people that live in San Diego, per the mayor's housing report, cannot afford to buy a home. And personally for me, I don't want to keep asking people for things or what I cannot do with where I live. So my question would be, how much of the funds will or could be used to provide programs that will focus on financial literacy to encourage home ownership?
So Costa-Hawkins would not create a new revenue source. All that Costa-Hawkins would do is, by passing Prop 10, what we would do is repeal Costa-Hawkins that puts a barrier between us and being able to pass new rent control policies or expand rent control policies where they already exist. But in terms of being able to buy a house, right, like you cannot save to buy a house. You cannot put together a down payment of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 if all of your money, if you're home burdened and all of your money, 30 or 50% of your income is going towards just paying for your housing costs, right? So home ownership is farther away from us at this point because the rents are too damn high, and so if we're able to limit, right, how much rents are going up, then that allows for us to explore the option of being able to save and buy a house. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, who's gonna oversee or regulate this proposition if it's changed?
This does not need any oversight, right? Because all it does is repeal an existing law that was passed in 1995 to allow for us to pass new rent control policies or expand the existing rent control policies. The biggest thing is making sure that our local elected officials, right, our council members, are able to explore rent control as an option. So the work is really going to be dependent on us to make sure that new rent control policies are passed. But in terms of who needs to oversee this ordinance, really it's us to make sure that rent control policies are passed.
So is that the council that oversees what the rent control percentage is, or who does that?
You would need to, right, so council members locally would have the option to pass rent control policies, and what that looks like is totally dependent on them, right? So in National City right now, we're moving a rent stabilization policy with a 5% cap. In Oakland, which means that they can't increase your rent more than 5%. In Oakland, the cap is 10%, so it really depends on every city. Every city needs to decide what they want to do and how they want to explore this as an option. So it's up to each individual city. That's what we want to be able to do by voting yes on Proposition 10.
Okay, one last question.
Okay. Do you have support from local officials already if it were to pass?
For rent control? Yeah, so it's limited, right? Because rent control has been, I don't know if any of you have seen the opposition. The opposition has raised $75 million against this because their business is dependent on continuing to increase the rent. And so lots of our elected officials are listening to them, but there are local elected officials that are willing to explore rent control as an option. I know that there's a good candidate here in District 4 that said that they would explore rent control as an option if we had the option. So we're slowly building up to that, but we need to, we collected 644,000 signatures to put this on the ballot. elected officials didn't do it. Communities rose up and did it themselves. You know, we found the money to be able to do this. It's a grassroots effort. This is what the people want, and this is why we're here. And this is why we need people to go out and take it the next step, you know, and vote for it. So I hope that we can count on your support for yes on 10.
And Paola, there's also another proposition that deals with this specifically for National City. So are you a yes, are you a no, and what is that particular measure?
I am a big yes for W in National City. W in National City is a rent stabilization policy that was also put on the ballot through a signature gathering effort. So citizens, you know, signed petitions to get it on the ballot. And we are in support of it because it would cap rents at no more than 5% tied to the consumer price index, which is the, you know, how inflation goes up. And it's also coupled with just cost protections, which means that your landlord has to provide a reason for why they're evicting you, right? They can still evict you if you break your lease, if you're not paying your rent on time, for lots of reasons, but they can't just say, they can't wake up one day and say, okay, I'm going to get new tenants, so I'm going to evict you. So it protects tenants this way. So we are also encouraging families who know families in National City to encourage them to vote yes on W and yes on 10. If W can pass with or without Proposition 10, it would mean that only apartment complexes are covered under W. But if we're able to pass both of them, right, and we strongly believe that we can do it, then it would allow for us to cover more units, which would be single-family homes, condos, and new construction, so that they're not excluded from rent control. So, yes, big yes on W.
Paolo, one more question, is we have quite a few realtors in our communities.
Yes.
We have people that are concerned about rent control and the regulation of single-family homes and the like. So could you address that?
Yeah, I mean, some of the opposition's arguments are that this is going to hinder development, that it's actually going to decimate the construction industry because no developer is going to want to build housing in rent-control cities. And we've seen that that's actually not true. We've seen that in cities that have rent control policies, we've actually built more and faster. So it allows, rent control allows for, you know, families to stay where they are, and it opens up an opportunity for developers to build more and to build more at higher income brackets, right? Which is what they want to build. They want to build market house or market rate housing, which is a lot of the housing that lots of our families can't afford, right? In North Park, there's a new complex that was built, and the rent there is $4,400, right? And so even if we had the option of rent control, or we have rent control in San Diego, they set their initial rent at $4,400. So if any of you are looking for housing, $4,400 off of South Boulevard. What that means is they're setting their initial rate, so they can still make a profit. The state constitution, the California state constitution actually says that landlords' right of fair return is protected. We cannot pass any type of legislation that would interfere with their ability to make a rate of, you know, a profit. And so if there's a rent control policy that is passed and they're making repairs, or they're, you know, having to do more of an investment to their property, in most of the cities, there are rent boards, so they can appeal those decisions there and increase their rent a little bit more if 5% or 10% isn't enough. But, you know, in Oakland, 10% of $3,000, which is the average rent, is still a $300 increase. And lots of our families can't afford a $300 increase.
Could you move this camera out of the way because I'm trying to.
Thank you so much.
Get some
Thank
space.
you.
Can you do that for me, please?
No, I can't. I'm recording for the event.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker coming to the floor is Ms. Ashley Welgan,
Okay, there's
who has a tremendous title. She
I'm
is
not
the
going
Public Policy Specialist in Farm Animal Protection for the Humane Society of the United States. And she is here to speak with us about Yes on 12. Fun fact, there's no local opposition to Proposition 12. Ms. Welgan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Ashley Welgan. I work for the Humane Society of the United States on their public policy team. We are one of the main groups that is backing the Yes on Prop 12 campaign. I am here to talk with you all about why you should vote yes on Prop 12. It is backed by all of the leading animal protection organizations. In addition to the Humane Society of the United States, it's also backed by the ASPCA, the San Diego Humane Society, and many, many more. In addition to the animal groups, it's also backed by over 500 California veterinarians, over 100 responsible California family farmers. It's backed by farming groups, such as the National Black Farmers Association, the United Farm Workers, and the California Labor Federation. So it has very, very broad support. So in order to understand why Prop 12 is necessary, we really have to take a look at how farm animals are treated, or I should say how they're raised on factory farms. Right now in factory farms across the country, there are millions of mother pigs, baby veal calves, and egg-laying hens confined in cages so small they can't move their entire lives. So taking egg-laying hens, for example, most egg-laying hens are raised in battery cages where they are crammed in so tightly with so many other hens, they are virtually unable to spread their wings their entire lives. And the visualization I like to use is, imagine walking, waiting for an elevator door to open, walking in, you see that it is already jam-packed full of people, you're forced to get in, and you cannot extend your arms, and you can't leave that elevator for your entire life. That is how these hens are forced to live for a year and a half of their short lives. The other species that would be covered by this are veal calves. In the veal industry, veal calves are routinely ripped from their mothers shortly after birth. They are forced to live in veal crates, and they're oftentimes tethered by the neck to further restrict their movement. This would cover those animals as well. And the last species it would cover is mother pigs, who are routinely confined in gestation crates. These are metal-like, coffin-like gestation crates, so small they cannot turn around or take more than a step forwards or backwards their entire lives. They're forced to live in these metal crates for up to 4 years. That's the amount of time we spend in college or high school. So Prop 12 would prevent the cruel and inhumane confinement of these animals in cages so small they can't move. In addition to that, and this is the real kicker, it would also mean that all veal, pork, and eggs sold in our state would also have to come from cage-free facilities. So it would apply to potentially millions of animals raised outside of our state whose products are going to be sold in California. In addition to the animal welfare benefits, Prop 12 has broad food safety implications as well. So not only would it get millions of animals out of cages so small they can't move again, it would also ensure that products from these abused animals are not introduced in the California marketplace. And it makes sense, right? When you cram animals in cages so small, they can't move. Take hens again, for example, crammed in a cage the size of a microwave. They can't extend their limbs. They are more likely to get sick. And when they get sick, they're more likely to pass along that illness to us. We have multiple studies showing that salmonella is a higher prevalence in caged eggs versus cage-free eggs. So that is exactly why the Center for Food Safety, the national food safety organization, strongly endorses Proposition 12. It would vastly improve food safety for California families. And lastly, factory farms that cage animals are also major polluters and wreak havoc on the environment and public health in the surrounding communities. Prop 12 would also help curb some of the worst environmental impacts of factory farming, which is exactly why the leading environmental groups such as the Sierra Club of California, the Natural Resources Defense Council, and most recently the League of Conservation Voters also strongly endorse Prop 12. So in sum, voting yes on Prop 12 would be a vote to improve food safety, a vote to protect the environment, and a vote to prevent animal cruelty.
Thank you, Ashley. Do we have any questions?
Yes, build on Proposition 2. So back in 2008, voters passed Proposition 2, which simply required that egg-laying hens, mother pigs, and veal calves have to be provided enough space to stand up, lie down, turn around, and extend their limbs. All sides agreed at the time, including egg producers who vehemently opposed Prop 2, that it would mean cage-free. There was no doubt, all sides agreed. It was completely unforeseen after the passage of Prop 2, the California Department of Food and Agriculture in its food safety guidelines, it interpreted Prop 2 to mean, doesn't mean cage-free, it means you just have to give them a little bit more space. So what we're doing now is strengthening Prop 2. We are specifically abolishing cage confinement for hens. So we're making it stronger. Back at Prop 2, that was the farthest we could go. It's 10 years later. We can go farther now. So we're strengthening that law.
Okay, thank you. Let's move this way.
I'm curious, as a person who shops, so you said that the products that are also sold here from other places would have to come from cage-free farms as well. Is cage-free or are cage-free products more expensive than cage products, and what is going to be done to, if that is the case, to address that for low-income families that are purchasing what they can afford?
Sure. Also a great question, and let me preface it by saying, please visit our website because we address all of these concerns as well. It's yeson12ca.com. But in short, the egg industry's own studies, and I can't emphasize that enough, these are not animal group studies. This is the egg industry's own studies show that the cost would be negligible. It would be roughly a penny more per egg. That is negligible to most consumers. The pork industry actually came out with a study that said farmers can save money switching to cage-free. So any increase would be negligible.
So this says it would be a $10 million each year on the state budget to enforce the new rules. Where does that money come from?
So again, that's going to be up to lawmakers to decide where that comes from. We do not foresee any tax increase, and the reason for that is, going back to her question, Prop 2, that back in 2008, following Prop 2, the legislature passed a law, AB 1437. It basically said the sale of all shell eggs in California have to comply with Prop 2 standards. So we already have enforcement mechanisms in place under that previous law. All this would do is raise the standards. So now in addition to, and again, it's the regulatory body is the California Department of Food and Agriculture, they're already regulating the compliance of shell eggs sold in California. So this just raises the standard. In addition to shell eggs, they'll also have to regulate the sale of pork and veal. Because there's no new creation of an inspection body, we don't foresee any taxes being passed along to the consumers.
I guess I understand tax increase, but more so with the budget, like reallocation from education, would that be cut?
Again, I think that's going to be up to the lawmakers, but I should point out that number, that 10 million, is relatively small compared with a lot of the other initiatives you'll see on the ballot. And that is just an estimate. Yeah.
Hi, I'm very troubled by this proposition. I received from one of the groups that I donate to, which cares a lot about farm animals, and I was one of those people who worked my feet off for Proposition 2. But this organization, I forget its name, I think it's Humane Farming Association, they are saying that this is a proposition that is very deceptive and that it was put out by the egg producers. So my question to you is, who is backing this? Who is putting the big money into this proposition?
Sure. Well, let me preface my response by also saying the Humane Farming Association they have come out with a lot of misinformation and false claims. We have an entire page on our website dedicated to refuting point by point their misinformation. So I encourage you to look at our website. This group, I encourage you also to look at their track record. They have never supported any legislation related to farm animal confinement. Go back to, that was about a 3-part question, so go back to your last part of that question, I apologize.
No, I just want to know who is putting the big money behind this.
So one of the claims they're making is that we're working with industry. I invite you to look at which groups are on which side. We have all of the leading animal protection groups. The Humane Farming Association is on the side, in addition to the pork producers, the Association of California Egg Farmers, who are opposing our measure. They also say that the United Egg Producers, that's the National Trade Association for Egg Producers, that we're working with them somehow. They have not taken a position on Prop 12. And our state's leading trade organization, the Association of California Egg Farmers, opposes Prop 12. So this is not an alliance between us and the industry. This is an alliance between all of the leading animal protection groups coming together, trying to take the next big step in the right direction for better treatment of farm animals.
Okay, I just want to encourage everybody to please go look for a no on 12 and see what they have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions. Again, all people have been invited from both sides, so please take all the information and consider that in your voting. So thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you very much.
Well, we are done with the portion of state propositions for tonight. We're going to move to a county measure. Let's go to Measure D. As I like to say, measure democracy. So, let's bring David Ladstein to the stage. He is the political director for SEIU 221. And before Mr. Ladstein speaks, do you see what's behind me? This is one of my favorite quotes when I quote myself. If you're not worth showing up for, then they're not worth your vote. Now, we've said this time and time again tonight. We have invited all sides, but I must make this very clear about Measure D, because we invited the very people who sued to keep this off the ballot 4 times and lost, and he declined, and it was not even respectfully declined. A board of supervisor, the 2 who led the charge against Measure Democracy, also declined. They answered back and said, no, we won't be there. We're not going to send a surrogate or an ally, and I feel the need to tell my community members that you all were not worth them coming out for. So with that, I give the stage to David Ladstein, who will have 4 minutes to present on why we should be voting yes on Measure D.
I think half the work is done for me. So I want to make sure to thank Monica and Genevieve for doing such an incredible job in bringing this to the community. So my name is Dave Ladstein. I represent SIU 221. We represent over 13,000 employees that work for San Diego County. And so this is an initiative, thank you, that is really important to the members of our union that serve the community. And, you know, as we started to talk about here, and a few of our other speakers, even when it wasn't about this initiative, we have a big problem with the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. I think as folks know, San Diego County is a majority-minority community, but if you look at who represents us on the Board of Supervisors, there's 5 supervisors, they're all white, 4 of them are old. I don't consider myself an old white guy yet, so I'm saying old, right? And, you know, they're all older white Republicans. There are 2 women. They've been there for a total of over 100 years. And this is a problem because when it comes to representation of our community, they don't have an understanding, they don't have the life experience. And it shows. We've heard about this before. They have hoarded over $2 billion in cash reserves. And when you hold on to money, you don't spend money. You know about the hepatitis A crisis where 20 people died. The nurses that we represent are the ones that were out on the front lines preventing it, and they're understaffed. All the staff throughout the county is underpaid and overworked. We're in San Diego County, compared to other counties, the lowest in enrollment of key services. These are like food stamps, these are Medi-Cal. San Diego County has mental health funds that come from the state of over $100 million that are just sitting there that are not being spent. We have a justice system that focuses on putting people in jail instead of making sure that they have the services and support that they need. And we have supervisors. They were ready at a moment's notice to write a $250 million check for a stadium, but they don't have enough money for this. And by the way, they also voted themselves a 12.5% raise while leaving the community behind. So I'm not going to take more than 4 minutes, but we have a big problem with the Board of Supervisors. But there's good news. We have a solution. I'm proud that our union, and with the support, I believe, of many of you, voted for term limits. So that means these folks are out of here over the next 2 elections. So we have an opportunity for some new blood. So some of that is going to be coming in this election. Vote for Nathan Fletcher. Some of that is going to be coming over the next couple of elections. So what Measure D will do, if if somebody's running for the Board of Supervisors, even when they get over 50%, even if a candidate gets over 50% of the vote, this election is going to be decided in November. And this is really important because in a primary election, we have a low percentage of voters. In a November election, that's when the most people vote. So we're going to make sure if anyone's up for Board of Supervisors, District Attorney, Sheriff, Assessor, and Board of Education, elections are going to be decided in November when the most people vote. And I'll use my last minute. Let's have a hypothetical situation. You have
35
somebody.
seconds.
What's that?
35 seconds.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I get fired up. You have somebody that's running for the district attorney. She's wonderful, dynamic. She's going to do something about the restorative justice system in our county. Let's call her Genevieve. But the problem is, this is a hypothetical. This situation, because so few people vote, she might not get 50% in the June election. So therefore, in this hypothetical situation, which is real, we don't get a chance to go to vote for her in November where the result might have been different. So this is a case where our community is being shut out because we want to make sure when we go to the ballot in November, if we have someone we want to vote for district attorney, board of supervisor, for all these offices, we're going to have a chance to hear our voice. That's why we're saying vote yes for Measure D, make changes in the county, and let everybody's voice be heard.
I have a request. I don't know if there are any questions for Measure D, but please, let's ask some questions, even if we're all of like minds. Mr. Greg Woods, my dear friend, you are in a great position. Can you please get a picture of Mr. David Lagstein with that screen behind him and send it to me? Thank you so very much. I need that on my social media. Are there any questions about Measure D? No questions about Measure D? All right, Mr. Price, that's a great question. He wants to know what is Measure D and how does it read on the ballot? Thank you, sir.
You know, forgive me, I don't have the exact ballot language in... Oh, does somebody want to yell it out?
So as we wait for that, I just want to chime in real quick. 2 years ago, we had Measures K and L, which essentially did the same thing at the city. And so what happens now is that our elections oftentimes are decided in June in the primary when many people of color and low-income people don't come out to vote. And so oftentimes we get stuck with elected officials that we didn't really choose. So what Measure D does the same thing that K and L did for the city, for the county. So that's basically what it does, but he can read the measure.
All right, thank you. And I thought it was prepared, but I forgot it. The text reads as follows. Initiative measure proposing charter amendments requiring all elections for San Diego County elective offices to be held at a general election and requiring adoption of local regulations relating to writing candidates for county elective office. So I think it's pretty straightforward, and again, it's a requirement for all elections to be held at the general election, which is, of course, in November. So thank you for that question.
Anybody else? Oh, okay. All right, well, Mr. Lagstein, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay. Next up, we have a measure that is citywide. So the countywide, every single person in here can probably vote on that if you're registered and eligible to vote. But for Measure H, it's citywide, so the city of San Diego, and it has to do with, I'll let them tell you. So for the yes, we have Andrew Sharp. He is Chief Public Information Officer at the San Diego Unified School District. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Sharp. And then for the no on Measure H, we have Brett Kozlovka. I had an S in there. It's not that bad. I didn't mess up that bad. He is the president of the Community Voices for Education. And so this is awesome because now we get to have our full format, is what we plan for every single measure. Mr. Sharp, you'll get 3 minutes. Brett, you will get 3 minutes, and you each will have 1 minute for rebuttal. Okay? So let us start with yes, and you will have 3 minutes.
I have to start with the clarification because because I work for the district. I'm not allowed to advocate for a measure, so I'm here to explain how, the whole process, how Measure H got on the ballot, some of the background, and again, I'd like to inform, and it's up to the voters to decide. So I'd just like to share a little bit about how we got here. And thank you very much for having us. I'm here for our board vice president, Chairman Whitehurst Payne, couldn't be here tonight, asked me to show up and just kind of run through a bit of the history. So the San Diego Unified School District started this process almost a year ago. Some activists brought to the board the question of should we have term limits. They also asked a question about should we have single-member districts. We have a voting system that allows people to be nominated by the district where they live in. There's a first round, and then there's a runoff that's held citywide. So there are folks that have brought to us, should we consider changing those systems. The district Board of Education assembled a committee of about 24 folks. They met from roughly March through June. They had open meetings across the city. They got input from a lot of folks. They did a lot to engage people in the process. They did a survey. At every one of the board meetings, they put up, at every one of these meetings, rather, they put up different options and let people vote for which ones they like. Coming out of that process came a couple of recommendations, one of which may appeal to some of the younger folks in the audience. One of the things they recommended was that 16-year-olds be allowed to vote in the Board of Education elections because they thought kids are right there. Kids have a real interest in who runs the Board of Education. All those recommendations went back to the committee. That committee then met, they talked about it, they came up with a group of proposals that they recommended to the board. One of them was for term limits. They recommended 3 term limits, 3 terms, a limit of 3 terms, 4 years total. And that is what the board actually voted on. And the board voted to send that to City Council. Because the district is regulated by the city, our election changes have to be voted on at a referendum. And so what's going to happen next is you guys are going to get to decide. The measure on the ballot is Measure H. It was introduced by Dr. Whitehurst Payne at City Council. The City Council Rules Committee put it on the ballot that way. So if you all vote yes on Measure H, there will be a limit of 3 4-year terms. It will start in 2020, and that's the history.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
10 seconds left. Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Ready? 3 minutes.
Thank you. I don't want to reiterate a whole lot. I give you more history than what was already presented because it's relatively accurate. I want to give you a little more into the weeds kind of a thing about how this process got here and why we're standing here today regarding Proposition H. Term limits is a big conversation amongst everybody on both sides of the aisle. Now, a little bit of background before we got to that survey was that the grand jury in the city of San Diego was inundated with voters from across the county wanting to know how we could better get representation through our school district. And so they decided to ask the grand jury to do an investigation about term limits and district-only elections primarily. Then they took that to the district. The district came back and had a special meeting and in front of the city council, and they decided that they were creating a solution for the problem specific to term limits, and that's directly from one of the sitting board trustees, Dr. Evans. Once that went through, the city council said, okay, district, go ahead and put out that, try to get more community involvement, which they did. They did a survey. They took a survey across the board. They did 5 town hall meetings within all the sub-districts, which was great, getting more input, but the results were a little bit different than what they anticipated. 54% of the voters of that survey came back saying they wanted 2 4-year term limits. 23% of that survey came back and said they wanted 1 4-year term limit. 12% of the voters surveyed through those sub-district councils that was created by an advisory committee that the district handpicked wanted 3 4-year terms. So what they've done is they've taken the lowest term limited survey that the people wanted to put it on the ballot with the idea that people will see term limits.
Talking about here, and they have locked in their payments to $50 million, and they're only going to put them on the site. So there are some stipulations. He's not wrong for traffic in there. It's just they stipulate that they'll pay basically nothing to mitigate that traffic.
All right, so guess what, you all? They are still on stage because Miss Fink wore 2 hats tonight. She is now going to put on her yes on G hat. And we still have Sean Duffy here who is going to speak to us about why we should be no on G. Thank you. Miss Fink, we're going to have questions after. Yes.
So I just want to say thank you so much for having me here today. I grew up in San Diego. I went to Crawford High School. I played basketball at the Hive quite a while ago. But one thing that I know about this community, and that is I'm wearing my red and black today, and that is that SDSU represents educational opportunity. 100,000 applicants applied last year. 10,000 were accepted. That's a lot of qualified students that are having the doors to education shut on them locally. And I know this. I work with a young woman named Fernanda Flores. She actually went to Hoover. And her dad worked at the Hotel Del as a room service attendant. And he couldn't have been prouder when 4 years ago, she walked onto campus, the first in her family to get a college degree. She worked 3 jobs while she was there, and she graduated 4 years later. And you know what she does now? She works at a nonprofit that helps workers just like her father. And that's the kind of educational opportunity that the expansion of SDSU West will offer. Because this is about keeping public land in public hands and for public benefit. This is about the community and educational opportunity for students just like the students in this room, who I'm so pleased to see here today. And it's also about growing our economy. $5.67 billion. That's how much San Diego State right now contributes to our local economy. I want you to imagine if we had an incubator for local businesses. If we were able to attract, the way UCSD has created Sereno Valley, the way that UCSD, when it was given the land by the city, was able to expand. Now we have our largest local private employer, Qualcomm. Qualcomm is in San Diego and was founded here because of the access to the students and to the research dollars. We have the opportunity to expand that for our local entrepreneurs. Ralph Rubio, how many of you guys have been to Rubio's Tacos lately? Ralph Rubio is an SDSU graduate. We need to create opportunities for more Ralph Rubios to exist. It's about our local economy, it's about jobs, but more importantly, it's about local San Diegans getting a shot. Thank you.
Mr. Duffy, can you tell us why we should vote no on G?
Sure, so let's tackle a couple different things. First of all, let's talk about SDSU and its role. SDSU, higher education is massive. It is so important, not only for San Diego, but elsewhere. It's just one of the most important things you can invest in. It's why Measure E in Soccer City really wants SDSU back at the table, and it's why we want to be part of their campus expansion. Measure G, let's talk a little bit about why SDSU, why the expansion makes sense just on the site itself, and then other things as well. I don't know if you guys are aware, but in terms of enrollment at SDSU, it's actually been down in the past decade. And what's happened is out-of-state enrollment has gone up 14%. That makes it more difficult for you, your kids, and your grandkids to actually attend. And it has nothing to do with how much land is at SDSU. In fact, the Cal State University system says that they're underutilizing the land they currently have. The problem for SDSU isn't land size, it's funding. It's why they're having more out-of-state people come in. That's the big issue that's here for SDSU in the near future, is securing more funding. In terms of growth, the university itself has talked about not needing anything at Qualcomm. Then it's saying maybe 80 years, then it's saying maybe 50 years, then it's saying maybe 30 years. It could be decades before anything ever happens at that site in Measure G. And a really big distinction here is for you guys. San Diego Unified School District, it gets 47% of the property tax that comes out of a site like that. That's massive because if that site sold from the city to the state, property tax is no longer paid. They pay something called possessory interest tax. The Sacramento County Assessor, and a completely unrelated thing, that's often less to significantly less. Anywhere from 30% to maybe even as high as 50% of the normal property tax income would be coming in. And that's money for SD Unified School District. Measure E generates $853 million because they pay full property tax. Measure G in a transfer to state eliminates up to 50% of that, if not more. That's a huge issue because not everyone can get into SDSU because they're struggling with funding, not with land. They can't admit enough people. But everyone here has the opportunity to go to SDUSD, and denying the funding from SDUSD is huge. And I think that's really impactful for us here as we're sitting here.
Thank you. Ms. Fink, a 30-second rebuttal, please.
Well, I'll just start with the taxes. The taxes are paid a little bit differently, but they're up to 90% of the taxes that would normally be garnered. The other thing is there's no guarantee with Soccer City that you're going to get a dime because they don't really have to build anything. Once again, they can build a hotel or not build a hotel. They can build a shopping mall or not build a shopping mall. Now, all their projections are based on imaginary promises. Now, we know that SDSU is a more than 100-year-old institution. We also know that through public-private partnerships, they will be developing housing and taxable things on this land. So we know that and the other thing is there's not going to be a ton of kids living there, young children that will be attending those schools. So the argument about taxes is just so funny. I've been on this stump for a year now.
Closing statement.
And I'll just simply say this. They have become experts in everything that helps their cause and claim to have authority on. And that's just been my experience. Thank you.
Mr. Duffy.
So real quickly, we're talking about promises and all that. If you read your ballot, you're going to see very specifically Measure E, to build stuff. Measure G, may. Because there are no guarantees at all. As soon as that land transfers from the city to the state, our ability to actually control what happens on that site disappears. Also talking about private-public partnerships, Measure G is a private development with the SDSU name on it. The people who are making money off of that are the same people backing the No on E campaign, which is Sudbury and Fenton, and those are the largest contributors to the people who stopped a couple of very important campaigns, I think, for you and I.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the questions. We're going to go to the questions, and we are going to limit the questions to the folks who are already at the mics in the interest of time. So if we can please start with this young lady here in the blue.
Hi, this is a question for Yes on E. Correct me if I misheard this, but did you say a team is coming to the stadium that's being built? Has the MLS identified a team? Is there an expansion team?
So there were 4 slots at the beginning of last year, beginning of 2017. We were hoping to be one of those first couple. At this point, as of 2 weeks ago, there was 1 slot remaining. Now, all of these teams were supposed to have gone out at the end of last year. But lo and behold, our vote gets pushed back a year, and the MLS decides they're going to wait a year. We think that's very fortuitous. One of the members of our team is the very man who the MVP trophy is named after in Major League Soccer, Landon Donovan. We firmly believe that Major League Soccer is waiting for us to give us the last team, and we're so confident in it. And soccer is such a compelling part of this project that we said in a lease agreement letter, we said publicly that if we did not get a Major League Soccer team, we do not sign the lease. And that's massive, because our entire thing is about the Major League Soccer team. Without it, we're uninterested in the site. And in fact, in our initiative, if we do not become the lessee because of this, because we don't get a team, SDSU gets to slide directly into our spot and negotiate with the city.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Okay, and question over here.
Sean, I have serious issues or just concerns about Soccer City. Did I understand that you did an environmental study impact as far as I live in Mission Valley, I drive Fires Road every day, and I don't like the traffic now. So with Fenton being one of the biggest developers in San Diego right now that has apartments all over Mission Valley, for him to build 400 homes or 8,000 homes or whatever it is, my concern is, has this environmental impact been done? And what would, if your measure wins, how would we really benefit as far as traffic is concerned?
Yes, that's a good question. And traffic is a really big issue, obviously, for everyone who drives through there. I think, let me see if I can cover all of that. So, all of the work you would typically see for a development process has been done by our team. We've hired some of the best people. The traffic engineers we've hired are some of the people who are constantly being hired by the city and other developers in the area. All of this stuff, by the way, all of the reports, all the studies, has been public since we first started this. You guys can all take a look at it. It's goalsd.com/documents. It's right there. It's all public. So it's all available for you guys to look at it. Our opponents have spent millions of dollars to fight us on all of this. And in fact, hopefully have spent some of that money to pour over the documents and find loopholes, to find issues with the exact environmental problems there. And we're not hearing a heck of a lot.
And if I can just allow Ms. Fink 20 seconds to answer anything about those last two questions.
Oh God, first of all, anything that they say, like a Major League Soccer team and they're committed in it, all of that is wallpaper. It's wallpaper because it's not binding. If it was binding, they would put it in the 3,000 pages you're going to vote on. And so anything that they say outside of that is all, a little bit of tap dancing. With respect to the traffic, I'll speak to this. Now, we co-funded a study, both opponents, and I'll tell you, we're being outspent 6-1 because there is a billionaire involved in this, and so they have deep, deep pockets. And in spite of spending all of that money, people have found out about what the loopholes are. So it's not just me saying this, it's the Sierra Club, it's the League of Conservation Voters, it's the League of Women Voters, it's the Conservative Lincoln Club, it's the Democratic Party. Virtually every single endorsement has been yes on G and no on E. So the validators in the community are there. You don't have to take my word for it.
Thank you, Ms. Fink, for that. Your question, sir.
Yes, being a lifelong diehard Chicago Bulls fan and Chicago Bears fan, I would like to address the fact that with the rumors of the Chargers returning back to San Diego, I've heard neither one of you mention the size of the stadium that you might build down there. Now, I do know that Super Bowls that come here every 5 to 7 years generate anywhere from $100 million to $150 million, but neither one of you have mentioned that fact. I also would like to say that I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that you're building a lakefront park down by the stadium, because we all know
10 seconds, sir.
we all know that that area floods, and you're going to wind up having the citizens pay for building stuff to get that fixed, and you're not going to be able to stop that river from going through there without taxpayer money.
Okay, thank you, sir. 30 seconds for both of you.
Let me just speak to the only stadium that can accommodate even potentially an NFL team is the stadium that SDSU will build. Now, the initial stadium will be expandable to that point, but obviously they're not going to build an NFL stadium with no NFL team. But the plans that are in place are expandable should an NFL team come back, not the same with the 35,000 seat stadium that allegedly Soccer City will build.
So I'll jump. So there's two questions really there. One is the NFL proposition. So we recognize the NFL owners are not going to want to come and play and expand and build upon an NCAA football team or even a Major League Soccer team stadium. That's why for 5 years after we start development of the site, we actually leave aside acreage specifically for an NFL, really a mecca stadium. Because an NFL team, they don't want to come in, the owners have really big egos, they're going to want to build their own thing, and we recognize that. And that's why we actually set aside the land. The big difference is we're not asking them to maybe expand an NCAA stadium to 55,000, which still would make it the smallest non-StubHub NFL stadium. So the second question was about the river park itself and the lakefront and all of that. I'll try to answer it very quickly. We're regrading everything right now. Basically, the way the stadium is currently built, everything got shoved in the middle. And so everything's really in the flood zone. Regrading the entire property to put the river actually in the floodplain and erase everything out of that helps accommodate that in a really, really big way.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Ms. Foster.
So my question is for yes on E. Soccer City has been the subject of a few different controversies, to say the least. First, that you were meeting with the mayor while the city was still supposedly negotiating with the Chargers.